The French mathematician Henri Poincaré, well known for his reflection on his own creative process, says, "Often when one works hard at a question, nothing good is accomplished at the first attack. Then one takes a rest, longer or shorter, and sits down anew to the work. During the first half hour, as before, nothing is found. And then, all of a sudden, the decisive idea presents itself to the mind. The role of this unconscious work in mathematical invention appears to me incontestable." The 1985 medical Nobel laureate Michael Brown describes how, as we did our work, we felt at times that there was almost a hand guiding us, because we would go from one step to the next, and somehow we would know which was the right way to go, and I really can't tell how we each knew that. I sometimes have this feeling when I'm writing my sermon for Sunday services. I start out with an idea, and then I research it. I gather my ideas from reading, from personal experiences, from films, music, the radio, talking with other people, or watching the television. And then I draw up a sermon plan from these ideas, and I think my way through the sermon structure and content. Sometimes this works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'm aware of something else happening. Sometimes I'm aware of an idea emerging seemingly out of nowhere. I go with that idea for a while, and then everything just stops. And sometimes I panic, especially if it's Thursday or later. But increasingly, I'm able to listen to a still, small voice that says, "Just wait. Go slow. More is yet to come." So I stop. I leave my desk. I leave my study. I make a pot of tea and I drink it. I pick up my knitting and I knit a few rows. I walk the dog. I vacuum the floor if I am getting especially desperate. And ever so gradually, the next idea comes to me, and then the next, and then the next, until I've got a sermon. Our intuition, if we listen to it and work with it, provides us with many gifts and many treasures, and it is indeed a marvellous tool. Yet intuition is not infallible. Dr. David Myers wisely points out the pitfalls of intuition in his book, Intuition, Its Powers and Its Perils. Intuition, he says, is not always all that it seems. My geographical intuition tells me that New York is south of Washington, D.C., that Canberra is so far east that, Jane, you're just about on the coast, that Albania is north of the Ukraine, and that Spain is due west of France. All these intuitions are patently wrong. If any of us were to drive down the street in North Carolina in the United States, our intuition would tell us to drive on one side of the road. Yet the rules and conventions of that place would demand that we move over to the other side, and very quickly. When I asked you all those questions earlier in the address, could your intuitive answers to them have been wrong? Could they have been dangerous, even? When you have a strong gut feeling about someone, is it always the inner voice of wisdom speaking to you? Or is it just an unconscious knee-jerk reaction born out of years of conditioning to prejudices and stereotypes? Could listening to your gut about someone just be plain old judging a book by its cover? Could some of what we call the voice of intuition just be a primitive response of ill-thought-out prejudices? Would we not be wiser in these cases to energetically measure our intuition against reality and subject our creative hunches to sceptical scrutiny? Does it really matter? We might ask. Does comprehending the powers and perils of intuition matter at all? I contend that it matters greatly. The intuitions of judges and jurors determine the fate of many lives. Is she telling the truth? Am I convinced beyond reasonable doubt? Will he do it again if he's released? Investors' intuitions affect fortunes. Has the market bottomed yet? Is it time to shift into bonds? Doctors' intuitions can steer their practice. Is he at risk of suicide at the moment? Is that chest pain cardiac in origin, or is it just indigestion? Intuitions shape our fears. Do we fear things we should or should not? Intuitions form our impressions. Are our stereotypes accurate? Just because we feel something strongly, maybe at a gut level, at an intuitive level, does not always or necessarily mean that it is right. Henri Poincaré, the mathematician I quoted just earlier, said very wisely, "It is by intuition that we discover. It is by logic that we prove." The undermind, the subconscious mind, our intuition, accounts for the arrival of ideas both fit and unfit, says Professor Guy Claxton in his book, Harebrain Tortoise Mind. Reason and logic then act like the environment, putting each of these candidates to the test and ensuring that only the fittest survive. The poet Amy Lovell echoes the need for intuition and logic to work hand in hand. She says that intuition is a most temperamental ally. Often he will strike work at some critical point, and not another word is to be got out of him. Here is where the conscious training of the poet comes in, for he must fill in what the subconscious has left. This is the reason a poet must be both born and made. He must be born with a subconscious factory always working for him, or he can never be a poet at all. And he must have knowledge and talent enough to putty up his holes. Intuition and logic, imagination and reason need to work in tandem, it seems, if we are to garner the great wisdom that they both have to offer us. To work well with both kinds of thinking, we need to have patience. We need to know how to wait creatively. We need to tolerate the emptiness and quiet of waiting. We need to remember the words of the tortoise in Aesop's fable, "Slow and steady wins the race," and not settle for the impulsive, superficial lure of the hare. To live a full life, a rounded life, a life of depth and texture, a life able to hold ambiguity and uncertainty gently within one's embrace, we all need to learn the value of working both with reason and with intuition. I would like to close with some beautiful words from the Sikh scriptures. They describe beautifully how when reason has come to the end of the road, we need intuition. And when intuition has told us all it can, we turn back to reason, backwards and forwards, around and around in a circle. If you want to play the game of love, come down my street, and if you set foot on its path, come with your head held in the palm of your hand, and do not be afraid of public opinion. Amen.